speed, faster than light travel, and real space acceleration. Both carry with them greater implications for battle and long-term war. For faster than light travel, your speed affects your ability to bring in supplies in logistics trains or to provide reinforcements to beleaguered allies on the front lines. The ability to strike out at enemy strongholds and vanish before help ever arrives. These ideas are all the more important when you're discussing combat on the galactic scale, when the front line could potentially be thousands of light years wide and territory tens of thousands of light years deep. For acceleration in real space, it's your ability to pursue and chase targets in a localized area, to evade and dodge incoming fire, or to regroup with the remnants of your allied forces. If all other available options to you are exhausted, it's your last, perhaps deadliest weapon. Speed is just as important as population numbers, or territory size, or even the numbers of soldiers and ships that you have in your arsenal. Depending on coexisting factors, it might even be the single most important trait to excel in. If your speeds are significantly faster than the enemy in real space, this grants you greater control on how the combat plays out. If the speed discrepancy is so vast that your ships move faster than their weapons, you can make it a monumental challenge for the opponent to even hit your ships, while you pick and choose where battles take place on your terms. This is important, if not more so, across wide reaches of space. If your ships can move across the stars with greater speed than the enemy, if it takes weeks or days for them to send reinforcements in the time it takes you hours or minutes, then you can be far more liberal with how you distribute defensive assets or offensive fleets. You could safely stack greater numbers of fleets and vessels on a single target, inflict the maximum damage to the enemy, and then move on to one or several additional targets before their forces have even arrived at the first emplacement. Both of these fictional verses have remarkably fast faster than light travel. With similar mechanics and considerations, both require the use of an alternate dimension to breach the light speed barrier, and both base their technology on that of an ancient precursor race. Today I'll be addressing the faster than light speed and mechanics of both. Let's start with the Covenant, and let's start by talking about what their faster than light travel is and how it works. From Halo Warfleet, slipspace. Slipstream space, often referred to simply as slipspace, is a hyper-compressed, multi-dimensional domain that allows starships and information to travel immense distances in real space over a truncated period of time. Slipspace drives allow ships to reach destinations hundreds, even thousands of light years away in the span of days and weeks. It is because of slipspace that interstellar governance and interstellar wars exist. Entering slipspace. Activating the slipspace drive creates an unstable portal between dimensions. The cruder the technology, the less elegant the entrance and exit, and the more dangerous the transition. Vessels that lack slipspace drives can follow a starship before the rupture closes and will be carried along with its wake. Ships in slipspace move through an inky black nothingness, lit only by the scintillation of trace gases and debris at the limit of the drive's protected real space bubble, the slipstream. Travel within slipspace is extraordinarily complicated, but it is often abstracted as navigating a, quote, tangled ball of yarn made up of interwoven dimensions. Courses are plotted by navigating superfine patterns of quantum filaments and jumping between layers in slipspace until a locus is reached that intersects the destination in real space. Preternatural intuition, or extraordinary computational power for predictive navigation and opportunistic flow choices, is a key element of determining travel time in these alternate spaces. Travel times. Slipspace travel has little relationship to real space distance in light years, and all trips are heavily influenced by currents and temporal variance effects. Some routes also have opportune confluences of pathways through slipspace, which can dramatically reduce travel time if risks are taken while navigating within slipspace. As a further complication, the slipspace relationship between locations is rarely the same in both directions, and can vary even along constantly monitored routes. The Forerunner Arc and the Colony of Harvest are both examples of destinations where travel time through slipspace does not correlate to distance. The Arc can be reached in a matter of months once the route is known and advantageous loci are discovered, despite being located far outside the galaxy. While travel to Harvest required nearly a year to reach through the earliest slipspace routes, even though it is on the figurative doorstep of Earth. Covenant slipspace drives. Covenant FTL drives bore deep into slipspace. plunging them into strange and unchartable realms that would disintegrate the ship were it not for stolen Forerunner knowledge combined with carefully crafted power converters and translation interfaces. Due to their use of enigmatic Forerunner technology and techniques, Covenant slipspace drive cores can only be built with the assistance of Huragok savant technicians, though Sanshayum artisans designed the surrounding systems. Human researchers have much to learn from the Covenant techniques used to integrate Forerunner technology with different data systems and power supplies. Covenant drives are fast and unerringly accurate along charted courses, but their lack of high-level AI for efficient pre-planning or course correction makes trips along unknown routes risky. Experienced shipmasters use short, fast hops to document new pathways and minimize potential for catastrophic navigational errors. I want to push back at this notion that slipspace time is either inconsistent or affected by these currents. The earlier sources such as the Nyland books or Contact Harvest definitely speak about slipspace as a roughly set or predictable speed throughout, able to estimate times to arrive or distances quantified by days or weeks of travel. I would be inclined to believe that these ideas were introduced as a means of explaining the sharp retcons that would come about in the Halo universe as time went on. For an example, in Contact Harvest, the narrative speaks holistically about how you can travel the entirety of the human sphere of space in months, but less than an entire year. Yet in Halo Glasslands, we have human ships navigate well beyond human space to Sanghelios in a fraction of the time, which is par for the course for Karen Travis and her work, but I digress. Slipspace has been changed to, much like hyperspace, often fly at the speed of the plot. However, there are examples that we can quantify. And so to that effect, I'm going to give a range of examples on Covenant speed from which to base our scale of potential speeds in the case of a galactic war. This modern interpretation of slipspace variance does smack of Halo revisionism in the modern era. In the Halo novel Ghosts of Onyx, Blue Team steal a Covenant destroyer, the Bloodied Spirit, during the Battle of Earth. They initiate a jump towards the real-life Zeta Doradus system at some point after 14,2000 hours, but before 14,4000. Zeta Doradus itself is about 38 light years from Earth. Shortly after jumping, assuming that the Zeta Doradus system is in the same position as it is in real life, the ship is already 16 light years from the system. At around this time into the jump, the ship is forced via an automated Covenant directive to disembark from slipspace and encounters a fight between Sangheli and Jirul Hani's ships. They quickly return to slipspace and make their arrival at Onyx by 15,2000 hours. The absolute slowest time for the ship, assuming it took the full hour, which it did not, means this Covenant destroyer was moving at over 38 light years per hour. That final bump of the trip, with 16 light years of travel, covered in less than 40 minutes, means the Covenant destroyer was moving at 24 light years per hour, or 576 light years per day. The text notes that this is within a pretty empty region of space, and therefore not one subjected to nearby gravitational bodies that may affect its speed, because we know, to some extent, the force of gravity in gravitational bodies does warp slipspace. So our scale in this example is anything from 576 to 864 light years per day, with the speed per second expressed as 210,384 to 315,576 times the speed of light. In my own mind, this is a pretty good general estimate of speed for most vessels, but we can do better, because while it may have made 16 light years in 40 minutes, as a maximum assumption, it made the initial 22 light years of the journey in under 20. That's 66 light years an hour, 1,584 light years a day, or 578,556 times the speed of light. That this all took place within 2 closely timed trips gives us a wide range of speeds to work with, but even with the slowest speed, this is still substantial. In UNSC terms, this means that a normal Covenant destroyer can be anywhere in the entirety of human space in just over 4 hours, or as fast as an hour and a half if it maintains those fastest speeds. That being said, Halo retconned the Nyland novels into oblivion a very long time ago. Generally speaking, in my time as someone who pays attention to the implications of these speeds, I tend to go with a higher value assumption, but I suppose that it's not necessarily the most accurate. But there exists a greater feat, albeit one that is itself riddled with issues. I am, of course, talking about the journey of the Prophet of Regret in Halo 2 from Earth to Delta Halo.
Clad.
Roger that. Status.
Sir, the Prophet is bugging out. Request permission to engage.
Negative, Commander. All Vector 2 heavies for star side intercept.
Bam! Slipspace rupture off the target's bow. It's going to jump inside the city.
There's no time, sir.
Green light. Green light to engage.
Punch it. Get us close.
Ma'am, without a destination solution.
We are not losing that ship.
Solemn Penance left Earth's atmosphere on October 20th, 2552, and arrived at Delta Halo on the 2nd of November that same year. But how far did they travel? Well, according to Halo Warfleet, and my admittedly incredibly flawed scaling via measuring tape and my own copy of the book, the distance was some 42,000 to 44,000 light years. I actually found, in the making of this series, a fantastic video by some guy who has gone out of his way to map all the known planets and installations in the Halo universe. His own personal observations say that the distance was actually 50,000 light years, so take that as you wish. I personally find it a bit difficult to measure this map.
Have you ever wondered where the Halo rings are located in the galaxy? Buried within the Halo lore are real stars, real distances, and I have used real star data to painstakingly create a 3D map of the Halo universe. Because I have no life. I've waded through and sorted out the inconsistencies, conflicting information, and fan theories parading as canon, which has left me totally fine. But I can't guarantee your sanity if you watch this video, so hold on to your photo of Cortana and prepare to teabag the cosmos as I descend into rampancy, exploring the most extensive 3D map of Halo ever. In my previous video, my depiction of the galaxy's scale was a little bit off. The galaxy is often quoted as being about 100,000 light years in diameter, and most artists' interpretations show the arms extending this far, but 100,000 light years actually extends well beyond those arms out to here. Space is big. The very first Halo ring from the first game, Halo CE, is Installation 04, also known as Alpha Halo. The Halo rings have two names, the installation number, which was given by the Forerunners, and a Greek letter designation given by the UNSC. And while we're talking about names, Sol is the name of our star and therefore the name of our star system. Some people previously asked why it's called Sol. In a nutshell, it's because of Latin. The Latin word for sun is Sol. Sol and Installation 04 are both located in the Orion Arm, which is also known as the Orion Spur. It's 3,500 light years in width and roughly 20,000 light years in length. Installation 04 is only 60 light years away and indistinguishable from this distance, so we'll come back here in a minute when we get to local space. The second ring visited by humans in Halo 2 is Installation 05, Delta Halo.
That is another Halo.
Say what?
Miranda Keyes and the gang follow the Prophet of Regret's ship through its slipspace tear, and although it appears like it was an instantaneous trip and maybe nobody thought about that when they were making Halo 2, later it's established canonically that it took them 13 days to get there, which is where we run into a problem. The only canonical source of the location of the Halo rings is from the Halo Warfleet book, and it puts the rings in this order, with Delta Halo on the other side of the galaxy about 50,000 light years away. Any way you try to retcon it, there's no way the Covenant could have traveled that fast. Because in Halo, faster than light travel ain't always that fast. Let's talk about slipspace. FTL in Halo is accomplished by entering a higher dimensional space called slipspace. Slipspace is an 11-dimensional space beyond our regular space. This is probably a reference to M-theory, a real-life string theory framework that hypothesizes 11 extra dimensions. And in canon, the speed of travel through it can vary widely depending on multiple factors like how good your drive is, the topology of slipspace itself, or how inconsistent the authors were. At the beginning of the series, humans have the slowest drive, the Shaw-Fujikawa Translight engine, a somewhat primitive slipspace engine sometimes referred to as punching a hole in slipspace, and can only travel at about 2 to 3 light years per day. This is why human territory is contained within that 100 light year diameter, because travel time makes longer distance colonization impractical. The Covenant, however, use repurposed, backwards engineered Forerunner slipspace drives which are more sophisticated and capable of at least 900 light years in a day. Forerunner dreadnoughts are the fastest known, having been calculated at over 2,000 light years per day. And there is a cost to traveling at faster than light speeds. To quote the Halo Wiki, while faster than light travel is bound to generate chronological and causal paradoxes by nature, ships traveling through slipspace rely on a self-healing effect of space-time called reconciliation, more formally known as causal reconciliation or particle reconciliation, to eliminate any paradoxes that may otherwise occur. This means that if you send something big enough through slipspace, sometimes it might slow down all faster than light travel in the galaxy, maybe the universe. This was the problem with the greater arc and why they had to make smaller halos. Literally a traffic jam in slipspace. But I digress. The Warfleet book is technically considered canon, but it conflicts with the Halo Encyclopedia in some place, and in practice isn't very canon-y because it was rushed and there's behind-the-scenes problems. So, if Delta Halo was 50,000 light-years away, it would mean they would have had to have traveled at 4,000 light-years per day. Maybe slipspace traffic was good on that day, but if we ignore the Warfleet book and put them in order of installation number, which the Forerunners do dumb shit, but I feel like they would have done that, it puts Installation 05 next to Installation 04, which would make it about 10,000 light-years away. So if they traveled at the quoted Covenant speed of 900 light-years per day for 13 days, would mean they could travel approximately 11,700 light-years in that time. Considering slipspace topology gore, that seems like a healthy margin and seems pretty likely to me. But you know what's even more likely is that the authors didn't care about how far the fuck. And I'm not hating. Honestly, I'm not hating. The consistency is pretty good, considering the depth of the lore, the number of authors, and we'll see in a minute how many real star systems there are in local space, and it's pretty cool. So I'm not hating.
For our matchup, we're looking at 44,000 light-years crossed in about 13 days, 141 light-years per hour, or 3,384 light-years a day, 1.235 million times the speed of light. In UNSC terms, this means any Covenant ship fighting in human space could be anywhere else in less than half an hour if they shared the speed. This is extremely hard to reconcile with the general pace of the war, but it is what the present lore says on the matter since the release of Halo Warfleet. There do exist examples of much slower speed. The encyclopedia refers to distances of hundreds or thousands of light years being crossed in days or weeks, and there are plenty of examples of Covenant ships taking a day or longer to get from A to B within human space itself, which is again the reason why I think they've introduced this retcon of wildly varying speeds in slipspace, which if we took as factual, basically means that you cannot reliably estimate Covenant speeds for anything. So for the sake of this video, we won't really be paying attention to that. We shall be referring to the examples we have, however, with Covenant ships travelling in open space at a minimum of 210,000 times the speed of light. Now, on to the Sith. Before I even start talking about ship speeds with regards to the Star Wars universe, there is one major thing I want you to understand. Every single value that I give will be wrong. Due to the nature of hyperspace travel and the properties of the Star Wars galaxy itself, almost every value given from here on to any future videos will in actual fact likely be an order of magnitude faster or greater. They will be underselling the true speed by necessity, which I hope I'll be able to adequately point out. Why am I saying this? Let's talk about hyperspace travel and the properties of the Star Wars galaxy itself. From West End Games' Star Wars First Edition. Background: hyperdrives. The hyperdrive is a miracle of advanced technology. Powered by massive fusion generators, it hurls its ship into another dimension called hyperspace. Only hyperspace techs and highly trained scientists really understand hyperspace. Even they admit there's a lot they don't know. Many aspects of hyperspace remain a mystery to Imperial science. One thing is clear though, in hyperspace, a ship can travel faster than light. To get technical, hyperspace is coterminous to normal space. That is, each point in real space is associated with a unique point in hyperspace, and adjacent points in real space are adjacent in hyperspace. If you head north in hyperspace, you travel north in real space. Real objects have a hyperspace shadow. That is, there is a star or star-like object in hyperspace at the same location it occupies in real space. This is a danger. Space is not a complete vacuum. Floating molecules are everywhere, only a few per cubic centimeter, but they exist. Larger objects, though rarer, are common too. There are many more rogue planets, which float in the interstellar void, unwarmed by any sun, than in star systems. There are uncountable asteroids, meteors, and random chunks of ice and rock between the stars. If a ship travelling at translight speeds hits an object of any size, it is instantly vaporized. Even a close graze with a rogue planet or sizable asteroid would throw a ship vastly off course. Astrogation is a tricky business. Routes. All but the smallest hyperdrive-capable starships are equipped with nav computers. Nav computers hold a wealth of statistical and map data, charting the positions of stars, rogue planets, known asteroid fields, and other dangers. Properly operated by a skilled astrogator, they calculate the safest, fastest path for a ship to follow through hyperspace. Errors are always possible. Merely transposing a set of numbers when entering data can send a ship far off course. Unskilled astrogators frequently play it safe by taking a slower route in order to run less of a risk. The desperate sometimes do the reverse, accept a high risk to get somewhere fast. Operating a nav computer properly is no guarantee of safety. There are billions of stars in the galaxy. The positions of most are charted, but that still leaves many whose positions have never been entered in the standard nav computer database. There are many more planets and asteroids. The positions of 90+% of them are unknown. A rogue planet shines only by reflected starlight. They can rarely be spotted even by the most powerful of orbital telescopes, and are discovered only by accident. There are trillions of rogues. Only the ones close to frequently traveled space routes are charted. As for asteroids and meteors, there are so many that no serious effort has ever been made to chart them. And all these objects, stars, planets, asteroids, meteors, gas molecules, are constantly moving, often in unpredictable ways. Accidents happen on even the most frequently traveled and best charted routes. The Star Wars galaxy is, while still largely empty, significantly more dense with material than our own. There are trillions of rogue planets floating out of the void in space, not connected to any system, and invisible unless they are shone upon by a star. Beyond that, there are asteroids beyond counting, which makes sense if there are so many stray planets floating around in the void. Add to that the various hyperspace anomalies, hazards, black holes, and all other manner of disturbances. Rarely, if ever, does travel in the Star Wars galaxy occur purely in a straight line. The space between stars in Star Wars is so vast that across corridors that stretch for tens or hundreds of light years, hyperspace lanes that are certified as safe run the risk of being obstructed. Logically, it's possible this loitering stellar matter is moving at faster than light speeds, for how else can hyperspace routes that are likely light days, weeks, months, or greater in breadth collapse in real time? Contrast to our own galaxy, which would lack these features by and large. Many of these features are deliberately orchestrated by the Celestials. So in regards to the question of speed, it's something of a false premise. Speed is not the limiting factor in hyperspace travel. It is the difficulty in getting from A to B. We continue. But the odds of an accident on a frequently traveled route are much lower because they are so much better charted. Going to a star system that has never before been visited is very dangerous. None of the obstacles along the route have been charted. Only the crazy or desperate would attempt to travel straight to an unexplored star system. Usually, explorers travel a short distance through hyperspace, drop into real space to take readings, travel a short distance again, and so on. This is time-consuming, but reasonably safe. Passage times. On a planet, the further apart two places are, the longer it takes to travel between them. In hyperspace, that isn't necessarily so. Theoretically, a starship can travel at practically infinite speeds. A well-equipped starship can travel from one side of the galaxy to another in a matter of days or weeks. The distance to the destination isn't the controlling factor. It's the difficulty of the trip. Basically, three factors make a journey difficult. Since most rogue planets and smaller bodies are uncharted, a starship's speed through hyperspace depends on the amount of debris that lies in the path. If there is a lot of debris, the ship must feel its way slowly, detecting and avoiding objects as it goes. The denser the debris, the slower the passage. If many charted obstacles, stars, planets, and so on, lie along a ship's course, it must zig and zag to avoid them, and that's time-consuming. All things being equal, the longer the trip, the more obstacles that a ship is likely to encounter, but sometimes the local star positions make a particular course tough. You might be a mere 15 light years from the Dagobah system, but if your course goes through an asteroid field, you'll still have to divert. The more frequently a particular route between two planets is used, the better the obstacles between them are charted, and the less cautious and slow a ship needs to be when traveling between them. The less frequently a route is used, the more cautious and slower a ship needs to be. The best case is a trip like the Kessel Run, one of the most heavily used trade routes in the Empire, and one which hotshot pilots and traders on the shady side of the law like to travel very quickly. The worst case is a trip between two previously unexplored star systems. The only guide the nav computer has in this case is the positions of known stars. Worst case trips can take months. The basis of exploration across the eras of space travel, as best seen in the Tales of the Jedi comics, is this concept of micro-jumping. In effect, you are utilizing your hyperdrive for small increments of time in order to minimize and take stock of your chance of fatal collision. This is further reinforced by the hyperdrive failsafe that cuts you into real space before you collide with any body in hyperspace. The worst cases of traveling from one uncharted region to another can take months, but this can be minimized with the use of hyperspace drones or disposable fighters. A fleet with these assets would have dramatically less issue navigating space, especially when hyperdrives are so ubiquitous that civilian ownership is common. Perhaps having individuals somewhat in the business of seeing bad things before they happen captain and crew your ships might help as well, as the Sith are more than capable of doing. So necessarily, these journeys will not be within a straight line, as I will measure on the Galactic Atlas. Many will be along the largest and safest hyperspace routes that go across the galaxy, before splintering off into smaller and smaller routes. Regardless, the closest point between any two objects is a straight line, and that's what we will have to go with, because we can never be certain of what routes are taken in these examples unless stated. Let's begin our investigation into hyperspace speeds by looking primarily at what we can glean from the era itself. To get speed, we need distance and time. We can get distance easily enough. Time is somewhat more elusive, and will necessitate a widely thrown and watered down net. Here are some facts about the timeline. The Jedi Civil War at the start of KOTOR 1 has been going on for about 2.5 years. The war started, according to the KOTOR RPG and the TOR Encyclopedia, in the year 3959 BBY. Both the KOTOR RPG and the New Essential Chronology say the war ended in the year 3956. There is some disagreement with the chronology on what year the war ended. The Old Republic Encyclopedia makes no mention, but the KOTOR RPG seems to agree most with what was established in the game. We know that KOTOR 2 took place 5 years after KOTOR 1 in 3951 BBY. For those of you who don't know, the Star Wars year is 368 days. So, the actual duration of the KOTOR game, if we were to stretch out the time, seems like it takes place between either 6 months or as many as 18 at the most. I would imagine it's closer to 6 than 18, perhaps even far less than that, because there are few indications on large spans of time passing. My personal preference would be to go with a longer span of time, because it opens up the potential of storytelling within this era, and gives, even though this era will forever remain dead, the characters a greater deal of time to know each other. One thing I never really liked about A New Hope is Luke and Obi-Wan don't really get to know each other before Ben dies. However, the additional time we grant KOTOR 1 bleeds off KOTOR 2, as KOTOR 2 takes place 5 years later and resolves itself within the single year. This has implications if you want to investigate their hyperdrive times instead. I will give a scale for the low and high end time assumptions within KOTOR 1, but before we start, we must first subtract a few days and weeks from our time limit, because right at the start of the game, upon arriving at Taris, Revan is unconscious for several days.
We've been slipping in and out of consciousness for a couple of days now, so I imagine you're pretty confused about things. Try not to worry, we're safe. At least for the moment.
And upon arriving at the Hidden Beck base in anticipation for the swoop race, he waits an additional day. There's also his training on Dantooine as a Jedi, which lasts several weeks.
The way of the Jedi is difficult. It requires great discipline. Yet even though you are a mere apprentice, your potential is unlimited, and your progress amazing. In all my years, I have never seen one who has mastered the initial training so quickly. You've done in weeks what many cannot do in years. I am honored to welcome you fully into the Jedi Order.
So our timescale is about 5 months, a week, and at least 4 days, against 17 months, and perhaps a week or less. In this time, without even contemplating that there's numerous side quests that require you to return to previous worlds visited, or that there's different orders in which you can visit each star map, we will be going by what I assume is the canon route.
Tatooine. Kashyyyk. Manaan. Korriban.
Taris, Dantooine, Kashyyyk, Manaan, the Leviathan at some indeterminate point, and Korriban. with Yavin 4 visited at multiple points during these events, and then finally a beeline across the galaxy and through, or more likely around, the deep core to Lahan. Travelling in a straight line at all times, as shown on the galactic map here, is a total distance travelled of about 230,000 light years, a bit under double the diameter of the galaxy itself. With our scale, this gives us an average speed of 163,000 to 524,000 times the speed of light, but we know for a fact that this is not the full extent. You have the return of Dantooine at some point to return Sasha, and you have to make return journeys at the behest of your companions. There's minor missions like the delivery from Korriban to Tatooine as well. The Darkside playthrough also has the entire Geno Harridan questline. While non-canon to a light side Revan presumably, unless we take the idea he's more of a neutral Force user seriously, as suggested by Drew Karpyshyn, nonetheless it's a viable alternative within the game's timeline, and KOTOR 2 allows for the existence of a Darkside playthrough in the first place. It is perfectly viable to take the longer path and wind up at the same destination in time come the end of the game. At any rate, seeing as I'm assuming for this calculation that the Ebon Hawk was in perpetual motion for the entirety of the game events, minus the times Revan was unconscious or training, which basically means that the rest of KOTOR just couldn't happen, I'm okay with using an interpretation of a 100% quest completion of the game. This video is long enough and time consuming as it is, so to make things easier for myself, I'll be basing my measurement on a completionist, glitchless speedrun of the game, and looking at the minimum worlds travelled to unlock all dialogues and quests, which I'll link the full video of in the description. Completing KOTOR in its entirety, with all the quests, Pizak matches, swoop races and companion missions, sees you go from Taris to Dantooine, to Tatooine, Manaan back to Tatooine, back to Dantooine, Kashyyyk, and then the Leviathan, Korriban, back to Tatooine, and then to Lahan, and this doesn't seem to factor in Yavin 4, which looks like this on the galactic map. This interpretation has the Ebon Hawk cross 346,000 light years, with an average distance travelled of 2,150 light years per day, 89.62 light years per hour, or 785,000 times the speed of light, down to 669 light years per day, 27 light years per hour, or 244,000 times the speed of light. Again, these values assume the Ebon Hawk was in perpetual motion at all times through the entire game. If we start messing with our assumptions and say 10% of the game was travelling, 90% was actually doing stuff, we start seeing travel speeds hit in excess of 5 million times c. Alternatively, the time between your capture on the Leviathan, your arrival at the final star map world, and arriving at Lahan is all within a week. We know this because Bastila states she was tortured for a week by Malak before falling to the dark side.
I resisted at first. I endured the Sith torments with the passionless serenity of a true Jedi, emptying my mind. But after a week of endless tortures, I finally saw the truth.
But we also know she had not fallen by the time you arrived in Lahan.
You are strong, child, but I will break you. I'll never fall to the dark side. You think torture will turn me, Malak? You're a fool. Torture? No, dear Bastila. You misunderstand. This is but a taste of the dark side to whet your appetite. When you finally swear loyalty to me, it will be willingly. Never. Such resolve in your words, but I see the truth in your heart. The dark side calls to you, Bastila. You hunger to taste it. Become my apprentice, and all its power can be yours.
For you, assuming you took the full week just from any of the 4 potential planets, looks like the shortest distance, Manaan to Lahan, 39,000 light years travelled, 5.5 thousand light years per day, 232 light years in an hour, 2 million times faster than the speed of light. The largest distance, Korriban to Lahan, over 60,000 light years travelled, 8,900 light years per day, 371 light years per hour, 3.2 million times faster than the speed of light. I know what you're thinking. These speed values are from the Ebon Hawk, the fastest ship in the galaxy. You can't apply these speeds to the Sith or Republic Navy. Perhaps you'd be right, if we weren't making some insane but necessary minimal assumptions. Fortunately, we actually have a good speed feat for the Republic Navy at this time.
The Starforge. I've never seen anything like it. I'm transmitting these coordinates to Admiral Dodonna. Maybe a quick strike by the Republic can cripple the Sith fleet. Message is away. Now we can just wait for the Republic to show up. We should be safe here. We're outside their sensor range. Small vanguard of Sith fighters coming in hard. Someone needs to get on those gun turrets. Take those fighters out before they report our position to the main fleet. Oh, we've got problems. We've flown to some kind of disruptor field. All my instruments are jammed. We've got massive overloads in all systems. I'm picking up a single planet in this system. I'll try and put us down there. Hold on. This may be a rough landing. The Republic fleet must have gotten a message I sent as we were crashing into that planet. I'm picking up a transmission from them now.
This is Admiral Thorn Dodonna to the Ebon Hawk. Do you read us?
Admiral Dodonna, this is Carthonasi. We're receiving your transmission.
Carth, I'm glad to see you're still alive. We've begun our assault on the Star Forge, but we're taking heavy losses. How did the Sith ever manage to build something of this scope?
Both this foray and the previous one by the Ebon Hawk is quite literally cross-galactic and into the uncharted, unknown regions itself. By the time you land on the planet of Lahan, make your way across the surface, disable the disruptor field, and get back into space, the Republic fleet has already managed to muster whatever forces it could in a pinch and launch an invasion of the Starforge, using the Kunat cluster as a staging ground some 19,200 light years distant. This is whatever the Republic could scrap together, and likely didn't take more than a single day. While it is entirely possible that Revan and crew spent several days on the planet, we were given no indication this is the case. Assuming it took between 12 and 24 hours, which I think is more than fair, the Republic Navy was at least moving between 801 light years per hour, 19,000 per day at 7 million times C, while navigating unstable and uncertain terrain. On the faster end, up to 1,600 light years an hour and over 14 million times FTL, they were effectively doing so blind and through previously uncharted territory. Other examples of speed exist, higher and lower, but this segment has become bloated and there's additional things to talk about. I will simply touch upon the notions given by the Tales of the Jedi sourcebook, set 40 years earlier in a more primitive era of travel, to close out the category of Star Wars hyperspace speeds, before comparing them to the Covenant. Taken from the Tales of the Jedi companion book, you should probably see on your screen a chart of hyperspace times across a multitude of planets. With the help of a friend, I have painstakingly gone through each and every example and measured their distances relative to one another per the Essential Atlas, and used this chart to calculate the average speed you'd need on each and every journey. These are my findings. There are over 150 calculated journeys on this chart. Of that number, 9 go well over 100 million times faster than the speed of light. 78 are in the double-digit million figure, with half that number ranging from 17 million times faster than the speed of light to just under 100 million times C. On the absolute bottom end of the scale, we have 70 examples. The top half of this value are over 5 million times the speed of light. Here's where it gets interesting. In over 150 examples, with one exception that seems to be a unique case, the Duro to Corellia run, that seems more likely down to the nature of hyperspace mechanics in that region of space, there exists among these 150 plus examples one single example of a speed that is going slower than the absolute fastest Covenant speed under its own power ever that I have personally witnessed and been able to calculate. Even our slowest example still has Star Wars commercial ships of this era having the edge in speed, even if slightly. The largest example given here has Star Wars ships moving over 100 times faster than the absolute best example of Covenant ship speeds, without delving too deeply into wonky slipspace mechanics. Even if we opted with the measurements I calculated for the Republic fleet arriving at the Starforge within 12 hours, discounting the fact they had to presumably pick up Vandar and the Jedi complement, marshal enough ships from the front lines or defense of star systems, and move off from the Canact system, while moving in an uncharted and hazard-riddled region of space, they are still more than 5 times faster than the fastest Covenant ships. This fact also comes with it a good idea of how fast we can expect Sith ships to move when, if they're able, to wage a war on Covenant systems. So for our final considerations, to compare these two factions and their slipspace speeds, we have Covenant vessels moving at most 1.4 million times the speed of light, and the Sith forces being comparable in speed to Republic vessels that number among their own forces at 7 million times the speed of light. The Sith have around a 5 times speed advantage over the Covenant, and that's without going into the countless examples of civilian ships going faster. As an aside, if the Covenant's fastest ship in a ship moving at our assumed speeds on the Sith side were to race against the 157 examples I've given you, taken from an earlier and less developed period in galactic history, then the Covenant ship would finish second last at best. On a small scale, these differences are not insurmountable for the Covenant on the lower end interpretations for the Sith, but they will add up when we look holistically at the implications of invading an empire that is some 40,000 light years deep in a straight line. The disparity in speed here is so vast, the Sith need never meet the Covenant on the field of battle if they don't want to. When we are comparing these speeds directly, in the scenario I have crafted, the relative distances mean that even at the absolute best speed, the Covenant are 2 days, 4 hours and 48 minutes away from the closest Sith installation, or 6 days, 16 hours and 19 minutes away from Ruria, which is the closest named settlement in the main blot of their territory. If the Covenant were to stage a force at Ruria and beeline it to Korriban, it would take them 9 days, 8 hours and 36 minutes. If they were to do it from their own territory at the closest point, it would take 13 days, 10 hours and 5 minutes. Their space to Ruria is separated by 6 days, 16 hours and 19 minutes. If they somehow knew where the Starforge was, and decided to focus all their invasion forces in that direction, it would take 18 days, 14 hours and 10 minutes with the absolute most generous Covenant assumptions for speed ever. And that doesn't even factor in the fact that these ships will have to refuel on the way. By comparison, if we're looking at the fastest speeds in just these examples, the Sith can cover the same distance from Dalang to Korriban in 1 hour and 2 minutes. If they were to move between Covenant space and the region surrounding Gamor, they could be there in 14 minutes. Where it would take 13 days for the Covenant to go from their territory to Korriban, the Sith could cover the same distance in 1 hour and a half. And reinforcements from the Starforge could arrive in Covenant space in 2 hours. At the fastest speed, if the Sith were stationed at any point inside Covenant space along the perimeter, they are so fast with the fastest commercial speed that they could be anywhere in Covenant space within 34 minutes. Let's bring this down to a UNSC level. As previously stated, the Covenant could be anywhere in the UNSC within 37 minutes or so by these numbers. For the Sith, without looking at greater examples in the EU, which do exist, if the Sith were to engage in an invasion of the UNSC, their FTL is so fast, they could, with no exaggeration, cover the entire distance of UNSC space in 10 seconds. So when it comes to determining a winner, you already know the answer. Even by our most generous, most optimistic estimates, the Covenant have no hope of catching up. The victor should be obvious, but that's FTL speed. Next time we will compare the industrial capabilities of both factions. See you then.
Mucha shaka baka, mucha shaka baka, mucha shaka baka.